Hey there, folks. Tonight we're diving deep into the murky waters of corporate greed and deception. Buckle up as we unpack the Wells Fargo account scandal, a tale so wild it would make Bernie Madoff blush. You see, banks thrive on trust. We hand over our hard-earned cash, believing they'll keep it safe and sound. But in 2016, that trust was shattered when Wells Fargo, one of America's oldest and largest banks, was caught with its hand in the cookie jar. Millions of cookie jars, to be precise. This wasn't some sophisticated Wall Street scheme. This was straight-up fraud, happening right under everyone's noses. Employees, under immense pressure to meet unrealistic sales targets, created millions of fake accounts, all without their customers' knowledge or consent. We're talking checking accounts, savings accounts, credit cards, you name it, they faked it. And the worst part? This went on for years, impacting millions of unsuspecting customers. Now, you might be wondering, how did a bank with a history as long and storied as Wells Fargo end up in such a mess? Well, to understand that, we need to rewind the clock a bit. Founded way back in 1852, Wells Fargo was a pioneer in the Wild West. They transported everything from gold to mail, earning a reputation for reliability and trustworthiness. Over the years, Wells Fargo grew, acquiring other banks and expanding its reach. By the 21st century, it was a financial behemoth, a symbol of American capitalism. But somewhere along the way, something went terribly wrong. The seeds of the scandal were sown in the early 2000s with the bank's aggressive cross-selling strategy. The idea was simple: get existing customers to open more accounts, boosting profits. Sounds harmless enough, right? Well, it wasn't. The problem was, this strategy was fueled by an intense pressure cooker environment where employees were pushed to their limits and beyond to meet unrealistic sales goals. Now let's talk about the folks on the front lines of this whole mess, the Wells Fargo employees. These individuals were the backbone of the bank, the ones who interacted with customers daily and kept the wheels turning. These weren't your Gordon Gekko-type Wall Street sharks swimming in champagne and caviar. They were far from the high-flying, risk-taking financiers you see in movies. These were ordinary people, tellers, personal bankers, folks just trying to make a living. They were your neighbors, friends and family members, working hard to support themselves and their loved ones. But they were caught in a corporate pressure cooker, driven by an unrelenting focus on one thing: sales, or as Wells Fargo liked to call it, GAR 8 performance. This term, GAR 8, was more than just a catchy phrase. It was a mandate that dictated their daily lives. Employees were bombarded with daily sales goals, hounded by their managers, and threatened with losing their jobs if they didn't meet their targets. The pressure was immense, and the stakes were incredibly high. Imagine being told you need to open 8 new accounts every single day. 8. That's not just a number, it's a mountain to climb, especially when the pool of potential customers is finite. Now imagine trying to do that ethically, day in and day out, when most people just need one checking account. The challenge was not just in meeting the numbers, but in doing so without crossing ethical lines. It was an impossible situation, and it created a breeding ground for unethical behavior. The environment was so toxic that it pushed even the most honest employees to the brink. Faced with the threat of losing their livelihoods, many employees felt they had no choice but to resort to desperate measures. The fear of unemployment and financial instability loomed large over their heads. They started opening fake accounts, forging signatures, and issuing credit cards without customers' knowledge or consent. These actions were not taken lightly. They were acts of desperation in a system that seemed to value numbers over integrity. The emotional toll on these employees was significant. Many were racked with guilt and anxiety, knowing that their actions were wrong but feeling trapped by the circumstances. Break rooms became places of silent suffering where employees would gather to share their frustrations and fears. The camaraderie that once existed was replaced by a shared sense of dread. Meanwhile, higher-ups in the corporate offices were either oblivious to the human cost of their policies or chose to ignore it. Their focus remained steadfast on the bottom line, on hitting those elusive sales targets. The fallout from this scandal was massive. affecting not just the employees but the customers and the bank's reputation as well. It serves as a stark reminder of what can happen when corporate greed overrides ethical considerations. In the end, the GR8 expectations led to a great downfall, leaving a trail of broken trust and shattered lives in its wake. The story of Wells Fargo is a cautionary tale for businesses everywhere, highlighting the importance of ethical practices and the human cost of relentless pressure. Section 4. Whispers in the wind. Early warnings and ignored pleas. Now you might think that such widespread fraud would be difficult to hide, and you'd be right. The scale of the deception was staggering, and it left a trail of clues that were hard to miss. In fact, there were red flags popping up all over the place. These weren't just minor issues. They were glaring signals that something was seriously wrong. As early as 2005, employees started voicing concerns about the unethical sales practices. They were seeing firsthand the pressure to meet unrealistic sales targets, which led to the creation of fake accounts. They reported it to their managers, to the HR department, even to the bank's ethics hotline. These were not isolated complaints. They were part of a growing chorus of voices trying to bring attention to the problem. But their concerns were largely ignored. The higher-ups seemed more interested in maintaining the status quo than in addressing the underlying issues. Some employees who spoke out were even fired, allegedly for poor performance. This created a culture of fear, where people were afraid to speak up because they knew it could cost them their jobs. It was like trying to raise the alarm in a burning building, only to be told to shut up and keep selling fire extinguishers. The irony was not lost on those who were trying to do the right thing. Meanwhile, the fraud continued to spiral out of control. The pressure to meet sales targets led to increasingly desperate measures, and the number of fake accounts kept growing. Millions of fake accounts were created, racking up fees and penalties for unsuspecting customers. These accounts were often opened without the customer's knowledge or consent, leading to a host of financial problems. Some customers even had their credit scores dinged because of these phantom accounts. This had long-term consequences, affecting their ability to get loans, buy homes, and even find jobs. But it wasn't just internal whistleblowers who were sounding the alarm. External watchdogs and journalists were also starting to take notice. In 2013, the Los Angeles Times published an exposé detailing the bank's high-pressure sales culture and the fraudulent practices it was engendering. This was a major story that should have prompted immediate action. This should have been a wake-up call for Wells Fargo. The evidence was laid out in black and white, and it was clear that something needed to change. But instead of addressing the problem head-on, they doubled down, denying any wrongdoing and dismissing the allegations as isolated incidents. This response only served to deepen the crisis, as more and more people began to question the bank's integrity and commitment to ethical practices. The scandal had far-reaching implications, not just for Wells Fargo, but for the entire banking industry. It raised serious questions about the culture of sales and the lengths to which companies would go to meet their targets. Customers were outraged, and many took to social media and other platforms to voice their anger. They felt betrayed by a bank they had trusted with their money and their financial futures. The scandal eventually led to congressional hearings, where top executives were grilled about their knowledge of the fraudulent practices and their failure to take action. It was a moment of reckoning for the bank and its leadership. In the wake of the scandal, new regulations were implemented to prevent similar issues from arising in the future. These changes were aimed at increasing transparency and accountability in the banking sector. Wells Fargo has since taken steps to rebuild trust with its customers, but the road to redemption is long and fraught with challenges. The scandal serves as a stark reminder of the importance of ethical practices and the need for vigilance in the face of wrongdoing. Section 5. The walls close in. Regulators and whistleblowers expose the truth. You can't keep a lid on a boiling pot forever. Eventually, something's got to give. The pressure builds, the steam rises, and before you know it, the pot boils over, spilling its contents everywhere. This metaphor perfectly encapsulates the situation at Wells Fargo. And in the case of Wells Fargo, it was the combined pressure of regulators and whistleblowers that finally blew the lid off this whole operation. Whistleblowers, often employees who could no longer stand the unethical practices, came forward with crucial information. They risked their careers and reputations to expose the truth. In 2016, the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office filed a lawsuit against Wells Fargo, alleging that the bank had engaged in widespread unlawful sales practices. This was a significant turning point. The lawsuit accused the bank of opening unauthorized accounts to meet sales targets and boost profits. This lawsuit, combined with the persistent efforts of whistleblowers, finally caught the attention of federal regulators. The documents provided by these brave individuals painted a grim picture of the bank's internal practices. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, OCCC, and the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office launched a joint investigation into Wells Fargo's sales practices. This collaboration marked a unified front against corporate malpractice, and what they found was not pretty. The investigation uncovered a culture of high-pressure sales tactics, where employees were pushed to meet unrealistic targets, often at the expense of ethical behavior. The investigation revealed that Wells Fargo employees had opened millions of unauthorized accounts, generating millions of dollars in fees for the bank. These accounts were often created without the customer's knowledge or consent, leading to widespread financial harm. The scope of the fraud was staggering, impacting an estimated 3.5 million customer accounts. The jig was up. The bank's deceptive practices were laid bare for all to see. The Wells Fargo house of cards, built on a foundation of fraud and deception, was about to come crashing down. The intricate web of lies and deceit could no longer hold up under the weight of the truth. And when it did, the fallout would be swift and severe. The stock market reacted almost immediately, with Wells Fargo's shares plummeting. The financial repercussions were just the beginning. The bank faced not only monetary penalties, but also a significant loss of trust and credibility. Customers were outraged, employees disillusioned, and the public demanded accountability. The scandal served as a stark reminder of the importance of ethical practices in the financial industry and the crucial role of regulators and whistleblowers in maintaining integrity. Pause 3S, Section 6, the fallout and rebuilding trust. The Wells Fargo scandal was a seismic event that sent shockwaves through the financial industry. The bank faced massive fines, multiple lawsuits, and a public relations nightmare that would take years to mend. But the real question was, how could Wells Fargo rebuild the trust it had so thoroughly shattered? The immediate fallout was severe. In 2016, Wells Fargo was fined $185 million by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office. While the financial penalties were significant, the damage to the bank's reputation was immeasurable. Customers closed their accounts in droves and the bank's stock price took a nosedive. But the repercussions didn't end there. Top executives, including CEO John Stumpf, were forced to resign. The bank undertook a massive internal overhaul, firing thousands of employees who had participated in the fraudulent activities. New leadership was brought in, and sweeping changes were made to the company's sales practices and corporate culture. Wells Fargo launched a comprehensive campaign to win back customer trust. They implemented new policies to ensure transparency and accountability, and they invested heavily in customer service improvements. The bank also set up a restitution program to compensate affected customers, attempting to make amends for the financial harm caused. Despite these efforts, rebuilding trust would be a long and arduous journey. The scandal left an indelible mark on the bank's history, serving as a cautionary tale for the entire financial industry. It highlighted the critical importance of ethical behavior and the need for robust oversight to prevent such abuses from happening again. As Wells Fargo continues its path to redemption, the lessons learned from this scandal remain ever relevant. It serves as a stark reminder that trust, once broken, is incredibly difficult to restore. But through transparency, accountability, and a genuine commitment to ethical practices, it is possible to rebuild and move forward. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest videos. See you next time.